Vic Bishop is the immediate past president of the East Side Transportation Association, by which we mean East King County. And he is the treasurer of this organization, and therefore, even though he has a lot of materials, he's only getting 12 minutes.
Thanks, Will. I want to give you a little bit of understanding of the ETA, East Side Transportation Association. We often discuss amongst ourselves this East Side thing, and I've come around to the point that what this does is give us the opportunity to say we are from East King County when we get into a statewide organization, and that seems to kind of handle the whole thing. But East King County is all the way from the Snohomish County line down to Renton. That's 700,000+ people that live in East King County. Now, there's 700,000 people in Seattle, and there's maybe another 50,000 north of Seattle, North Shore. So it's like 750, maybe 800,000 on the Seattle side of Lake Washington in King County, and there's 750 on the east side of Lake Washington of East King County, and then there's another 600,000 or 700,000 south of Lake Washington in the southern part of the county. So we represent a third of the county, and our organization is centered on the east side, so 405 becomes our total focus. Now, I don't want you to look at that yet because I'm not there. We've spent a lot of effort in the last year trying to develop a coalition, as has been done in Spokane and in Tri-Cities. And we feel like we've been quite successful in getting the cities and the chambers of commerce and the stakeholders together to say finishing the 405 master plan is a critical element for our whole east side. And when we say finish the master plan, this is a master plan that took $7 million in 3 years to complete in 1999 through 2002. It was a 2020 horizon year master plan that said it would take care of 95% of the traffic congestion that was expected in 2020, 3 months from now. We are now all the way up to 35% complete on funding and building those master plan elements. And indeed, we funded another 10%, so we're already now up to 45% of funded, which, by the way, won't be that extra 10% won't be complete until 2023. And in 2.5 months, I guess it is from now, we're going to hit 2020, which is the master plan. So we've been focused on that. And what we're very aware of is that the Puget Sound Regional Council, our HMO, our MPO, does a really nice job of a 2040 transportation plan based upon the PSRC's horizon planning thoughts. And they come up with this great, wonderful list of projects that would fund the 2040 plan. And so what we've done is gone into that Puget Sound Regional Council list and identify all the projects that are related to I-405 that are on that list that are unfunded. And these are all unfunded projects. There's not a dime towards any of these projects that are in the master plan that was thought of to be done in a month and a half. Obviously, they're not going to be done in a month and a half. It's going to take 25 years to get those done because there's a pile of them. And then, in addition to the 405 master plan project, there's a whole bunch of projects on the PSRC list that are on state highways in East King County that add up to another big number. Now here, I think yeah, we're saying the 405 master plan number, the number 13.5 billion is, I've adjusted that down a little bit because a couple of things got funded, but it's 13.1 billion is the number I'm using now. It's over $13 billion of master plan projects that are on the PSRC list that are unfunded. And there's another 3.2 billion of state highway projects within East King County that are on the master plan, that are assumed in the plan to be done by 2040, that are totally unfunded, and nobody's doing anything about it. We looked at this and we said, holy cow, how are we going to get the narrative out there that when Senator Hobbs is thinking about $17 billion program, we want it all right here on our little project? And how does this fit into the scope of things? Well, I went to the PSRC list, to the non-PSRC list around the state, and very quickly looking at other MPOs and other projects around the state, the Columbia River Crossing amongst them, and the Everett Trestle amongst them. This $16 billion grows to $42 billion of known projects that every community in our state is saying, we know we need these, they are totally unfunded, and we want more. That doesn't even get to the preservation and maintenance that we're talking about here. So we heard Secretary Millar and Senator Hobbs and Representative Fay a year ago at our Spokane meeting talk about the concepts of support for maintenance and preservation. And Secretary Millar says that, well, I'm $700 million a year short. I multiply that times 25 years, I'm thinking of a 25-year program. And then we heard the Crabb and Tibb representatives say, well, you know, our counties and our cities are right in there with WashDOT, that we are just as short as they are, so I doubled that. And there's $42 billion. And then the ferry system wants $5 billion, and the fish culvert thing wants, at the state level, $3.7 billion, but the county people say, hey, we're right behind the state, we're going to have the same lawsuit, we're going to have the same problem, so I doubled that and got up to $7 billion. I very quickly, without hardly thinking about it at all, got to a $100 billion program over the next 25 years. We need to change, and everything we're talking about here, I'm going to go back to a narrative that I have. All things transportation is incremental. You do what you can do with what you've got to do with it right now to take the very next step. It's the most important, but we've chronically underfunded our whole system, and I'm here to say that I believe that the vote this week is a direct result of that underfunding of our highway system. And we've got a lot of ticked off voters out there who are saying, I've spent a lot of money on transportation, but I don't see very much good results out of it. I'm seeing congestion growing like crazy, and I'm paying a pile of money. And I've got a vehicle here to make a statement about. And so they did. And I believe that's the message. And what the opportunity is that there's going to be a great feeding frenzy of what to do about that. We've got the opportunity to have a discussion about transportation funding that is wide open. And it's statewide. I mean, I totally understand why people within the Sound Transit District that are paying $1,000 per car for tab fees think, well, maybe I'll vote no or vote yes and have it back. But I'd have a much harder time understanding why the 30-odd counties around the state that only pay $75 for a car tab fee did the same thing. But what I think the message is that we got a lot of ticked off people, ticked off voters. And so I'm wanting to bring in the concept that we not only have a capacity problem, but we have a whole host of other things, of which maintenance and preservation is one of them. Now, I want to go over this. What I did with that $13.5 billion is break up those 28 or so projects by city. In this example, I've got it, and that's this one. I got a package for each of those cities up there. I've got a list from the PSRC, a document as to what the specific projects are in each one of those, and I'm going to show you one of them. And they don't add up to the 13 because there's multiple, several projects go through multiple cities, and so that doesn't work. But you can see the top one there is Bellevue. In Bellevue alone, there are $5.2 billion worth of 405 projects that touch the city of Bellevue. And there's another $0.4 billion that are in state highways. That's I-90, 520, fundamentally. And they add up to over $5.5 billion of known projects that are on the books from the planning point of view. Don't say we don't have a plan. Of course we have a plan. What we don't have is funding for the plan. And that's what we ought to be, that's what we are talking about, is the funding for the plan. So, and each one of those cities at Touch 405 is on the top of the list, and then some of the other cities in East King County that have state highways in them but don't touch 405 are near the bottom. Let's go to the next slide. So here's the list. I'm not going to go over that, but you go line by line by line to see in terms of billions of dollars. And the second from the last column is the legislative district. So I was able to sort all these by legislative district. I got a similar list to this by ledge district within East King County. Go to the two down. So here's the 5.6 billion for Bellevue. Now, okay, they're all related to 520 and 405. 405 is the core of the whole access to the whole east side. And so almost anything you talk about up and down, we've got, 5.2 billion is a little more than a third of the 13 billion that come in and touch the Bellevue. We think that we have to have the narrative to talk about the big picture, knowing that we're not going to get anywhere near that, but we need to have a thought of a big program, and I think it ought to be 25 years. We think to pay for it, we need multiple sources, and I have not gotten beyond the idea that gas tax is by far and away the best source for the whole host of reasons that it's worked forever, not the least of which is so cheap to collect, and also very extremely broad-based. And we haven't increased it, and the biggest problem with the gas tax, of course, is it's not inflationary. It's pennies per gallon, and so as the economy grows, it doesn't grow, except as we buy more gallons. That's a political problem, and we can solve that political problem, but we got to message it correctly, and that's what I'm out supporting, is we got to change the narrative about how we think about transportation and how we pay for it. Now, I brought my little paper. I had a bad name for it before, but now I've got it called What You Need to Know About Traffic, and it's much less controversial than the way I had it titled before. But in this, I make the case that the average American in Puget Sound area person buys about 500 gallons of gas a year per car. At 500 gallons of gas a year and 50 cents a gallon of state tax, 49.4, we call it 50 cents, that's 250 bucks. And you add the federal tax and some late fees, and you get all the way up to $350 per year, per vehicle of direct taxes for transportation. Well, you divide that by 365 days, and we're paying $1 a day. What do you get for your $1 a day? You get to utilize 99.8% of the highway system of America for $1 a day. What an incredible deal. Why can't we talk about highway funding in the terms of numbers that people can relate to? And oh, by the way, that highway system is utilized by 98% of all the trips in America, including the bus systems, including the pedestrians, including the bicycles. The only ones that don't use it are the rail systems. The rail system that in King County, or three-county area, by the way, has a $96 billion 25-year program. $96 billion. What does it do? It carries 0.5% of the trips in that area. $96 billion for a rail system that carries 0.5%, and we're quibbling over a $5 or $6 or $17 billion statewide program that carries 99% of the trips. Why are we so inept that we can't get this message out? And I'm about trying to change the narrative so that we can get the funding for our supercritical system. And my impression is the labor unions are just as happy to build highways as they are to build transit systems. So I think this is a good labor thing as well as everybody else. So that's my message.
Vic, I want to thank you very much, and you came very close to your time allocation as well. What I'd like to do, if we could, since one of your themes was, I wrote it down so wouldn't forget, and then I forgot. You talked about a feeding frenzy, and what I'd like us to do is to take about 10 minutes and use the restrooms and get sandwiches and then come back, because we want to talk a little bit about a taxpayer revolt in 1944 on this day that established the 18th Amendment. So get your sandwiches and try to be back in 10 minutes or so we can stay on schedule.
If anybody wants a copy of the list, I've got the list by city and the list by district. They're King County legislative districts. Not going to happen. Not going to support Eastern Washington, but I've got all that here.
Great. Thank you.